What's up everyone, I am Jamie with 3littlegoats.com. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I make a lot of soap making videos as well as some other fun videos as well. If you've been around for a while, welcome back. I'm glad to see you as always. So back when we lived in Washington, I started a beginner soap making series where I've kind of done different aspects of soap making, from lye safety to where to get supplies and things like that. But the one thing I didn't go over yet is what are the absolute necessary things you need to start making soap. So if you've never made soap before and you're thinking about making soap, stick around because I'm going to show you the tools that are essential for soap making. So let's get started. So first things first, I'm just going to touch over some safety things. I do have a video dedicated to lye safety, so be sure to check that out if you've never worked with lye. It can be a little intimidating at first, but it's really fun to make soap once you get the hang of it. There's nothing really to be scared of if you take the right precautions. So whenever I am soaping, I put on a long sleeve shirt. I just keep a button down long sleeve shirt here in my office. That way I can just throw it on when I'm making my lye water solution. And I'm always wearing closed-toed shoes when I am working with lye as well. The next thing you're going to want is eye protection, which if you wear glasses and you have a large enough frame will suffice as long as you're not really accident prone. But I would suggest when you're first starting off to just go to the dollar store and pick up a cheap pair of safety glasses. That way you can protect your eyeballs, because lye in your eyeballs is not a good thing. The next thing, which I don't have right now because of all of the things going on in the world, they're hard to come by, is some sort of respirator. Mine got damaged beyond repair when we moved to Arkansas, so I don't have one anymore. But if you have the opportunity to invest in a respirator, I suggest you do that when you're working with your lye water solution. When you mix your lye and your water together, it does put off some pretty heavy fumes that you do not want to breathe in. Now, if you don't have a respirator or you don't have access to a respirator, be sure to just work in a very well ventilated room. Turn a fan on, open your windows. Just make sure you got a lot of airflow and don't get your face too close to your lye water solution. That way you're protecting your lungs. The next thing you're going to need is gloves, especially when you're mixing your lye water solution, but I also wear them while I'm making my soap and while I cut my soap, just in case there is some lye that hasn't been incorporated completely into the soap. I like to use disposable nitrile gloves, that way I can feel what I am doing. If you can't find disposable gloves, dishwashing gloves work as well, just they're a little bit harder to work with because they're thicker, and if you're like me, I like to be able to feel what I'm doing, and they can get a little bit slippery when you're working with oil. So if you can find some disposable gloves, those are ideal. All right, so now that you have all of your safety equipment ready to go, what else are you gonna need? You're gonna need some lye, sodium hydroxide. In a pinch, you could probably find this at a lot of big box stores in the plumbing aisle. Just make sure that it says pure sodium hydroxide or pure lye, 100% lye. You don't want to use something like Drano that's got a whole bunch of chemicals mixed in. You want to make sure it's pure. If you can order it online, you can get it from Amazon and any really good reputable soap distribution company like Brambleberry or Wholesale Supplies Plus, or I think Bulk Apothecary even sells lye. But make sure you try to get it from a reputable source if you can. You're also going to need distilled water. Don't use the water out of your tap. Your tap water, even if you have a filtration system, could have trace amounts of different minerals and metals that could react with the lye. So always stick with distilled water. They're 99 cents, I think, for a jug of water at your local Walmart. And there's also other alternatives, like I make beer soap. I also make milk soap. So you don't have to just stick with distilled water, but if you're not going to be making one of those specialty soaps, stick with distilled water. And then once you have your lye and your water ready, you're going to want to choose your oils. You can just go to your local grocery store and pick up some olive oil or coconut oil and use those. And you can also order different oils online, like this is safflower oil I like to use. It just depends on what type of soap you want. If you want a harder soap, more bubbly soap. I have a blog post, I'll link it down below, that has a lot of the commonly used oils and what their benefits and how they kind of react in soap, if you want to check that out. So now that you have all of your soap making ingredients, I would call them, yeah, we'll call them ingredients. It's kind of like a recipe. You're going to need some tools. The first most important tool you will need is a scale. You're going to want a scale that does at a minimum ounces. If you can find one that does grams, that's even better. If you've ever tried to find a soap recipe online, chances are they're in a percentage for you to put into a soap calculator, or they're in ounces or grams, because it's the only way you can really make soap. You'll never see a recipe that says 2 cups of olive oil and a half a cup of sodium hydroxide. You'll never see that. You're going to always measure out your ingredients by weight. The next important tool you're going to need, a stick blender or an immersion blender. Some people call it either or. I call it both, but you're going to need one of these. Yes, you can mix soap by hand with a whisk, but your arm is probably going to be pretty sore by the end of it. So invest in a stick blender. You can go to your local thrift shop and usually pick them up for fairly cheap. You can find them online for fairly cheap as well, but you're going to need one. The next thing you're going to want to keep in your soaping supply stash is some spatulas or spoons. I like to use silicone ones. They're nice to just be able to mix in your fragrance oils or mix your micas and scrape your bowls. That way you don't have a lot of leftover soap in your bowls. They're just good to have, and you can pick them up at the dollar store for really cheap. They're great to have. And then after you have all of your supplies ready, you're going to need some mixing bowls, of course. I suggest probably at least a minimum of 3 dedicated bowls to make your soap with. I picked all of these up at the Dollar Tree for $1 each. And you're going to want one to measure out all of your oils. You're going to want one to measure out your water. And you're going to want one to measure out your lye solution as well. And then last, but definitely not least, you're going to need a mold. You can pick these up on Amazon. You can go to your bakery section at your local store and get molds that you can use for like chocolates and things like that. You can use a loaf mold. You can use an individual mold. If you don't have a soap cutter and you're not very good at cutting straight down like I am when it comes to loaves, you can always get like the individual soaps. That way you don't have to worry about cutting them, and it makes it a lot easier. Just pop them out, you let them cure, you're good to go. But if you want to make large batches, I suggest getting some loaf molds. I get these off of Amazon. I've had these for years and they work great. I suggest silicone if you can get it, because it's just easier to get the soaps out of. I like these molds because they have the wooden base that the silicone mold slides into, and then you can just slide it out, pop your soap out, and you're good to go. So that is all the basic equipment and tools that you're going to need to make your first loaf of soap or bar of soap, depending on the molds that you use. Now, if you want, you can always add in different micas and different fragrances to personalize your bar of soap, but to just make a basic bar of soap, that is the tools that you're going to need. It may seem like a lot, but the equipment you're going to reuse over and over and over again, so it's really going to be worth the investment. And you can get a lot of the things that you're going to need from the Dollar Tree, with the exception of like the immersion blender and the food scale, but you can generally find those at the thrift store or online for fairly cheap as well. I'll link some cheaper options down below if you're interested in those. So that is what I have got for you guys today. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. What are you waiting for? We put out videos every single week, and we will get back to our regularly scheduled soap making next week. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.